Good evening, it's 8 o'clock. You're watching the UK Tonight. Coming up, the United States vows to strike even deeper into Iran. On day 5 of this war in the Middle East, the US claims responsibility for the sinking of an Iranian Navy ship, one of 2,000 targets America says it has hit.
The first sinking of an enemy ship by a torpedo since World War II. Like in that war, back when we were still the War Department, we are fighting to win.
With the energy price cap set for a sharp rise, Sky News can reveal more than half of fixed tariffs have been pulled from the market since the first bombs were dropped on Saturday morning. Plus, we'll get the latest on efforts to get people back to the UK. A small number of commercial flights left the United Arab Emirates today, and a repatriation flight carrying Britons out of Oman is set to leave tonight. Plus, we'll head live to the White House, where President Trump is due to speak shortly. All that to come and much more here on the UK Tonight. Well, the latest this evening, the White House saying it has struck 2,000 targets in Iran since this war erupted on Saturday morning. Among them, an Iranian naval ship sunk by a US submarine in the first such attack since the Second World War. It is day 5 of this conflict, and both the United States and Israel are continuing their strikes on Iran, which have killed hundreds of people and spooked global markets. In Tehran, the 3-day funeral ceremony for Ayatollah Khamenei has been postponed, with the world watching and waiting for his successor as supreme leader to be named. We are expecting, as I said, to hear from President Trump at the White House shortly. First, let's hear what his Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, had to say when he spoke to reporters at the Pentagon this lunchtime.
Yesterday, in the Indian Ocean, and we'll play it on the screen there, an American submarine sunk an Iranian warship that thought it was safe. Instead, it was sunk by a torpedo. Quiet death. The first sinking of an enemy ship by a torpedo since World War II. Like in that war, back when we were still the War Department, we are fighting to win. Also, yesterday, the leader of the unit who attempted to assassinate President Trump has been hunted down and killed. Iran tried to kill President Trump, and President Trump got the last laugh. Only the United States of America could lead this, only us. But when you add the Israeli Defense Forces, a devastatingly capable force, the combination is sheer destruction for our radical Islamist Iranian adversaries. They are toast, and they know it. Or at least, soon enough, they will know it.
Well, let's bring you up to date with the main developments of today. Strikes on the Iranian capital have been continuing, including what you see here on your screen. This is a police station that was destroyed. Apartment blocks in southeastern Tehran have also been hit. The IDF says it has struck Air Force struck dozens of command centres of the Iranian terror regime, while it's being reported that Iran is threatening to target Israeli embassies worldwide if Israel attacks the Iranian embassy in Beirut. Well, explosions are also ongoing across Lebanon, where the IDF says it is targeting the Iranian-backed militia group Hezbollah. This is the moment the Israeli Air Force struck what it says are 2 Hezbollah buildings in the suburbs of Beirut. It comes after a string of explosions across Lebanon's capital city this morning. This is after Israel's military issued evacuation orders for 16 villages. Israel says its own air defences have been activated to intercept incoming Iranian missiles, with explosions heard around Jerusalem. And these images show a fire that broke out near the US consulate in Dubai following a drone strike yesterday. We're bringing you updates on that. Yesterday evening on the show, the US Secretary of State saying that all the consulate's personnel have been accounted for. Well, let's bring in our US correspondent, James Matthews, following developments from Washington, the White House, where we are expecting to hear from President Trump this hour. And James, let's talk about, well, President Trump's spat with Spain. Obviously, he singled out Spain and the UK yesterday, talking to reporters about how both nations were being uncooperative. The White House now saying Spain is cooperating. Spain saying a different story tonight.
That's right. Yeah, not for the first time, discord and distance between the United States and European allies. There was quite a lot in a White House briefing here, Sarah-Jane, just half an hour ago from Caroline Levitt. A couple of lines from that. For me, what stood out was the business, or the absence actually, of regime change. You'll remember Donald Trump on Truth Social, help was on the way. A few weeks ago, he was telling Iranian protesters in the street, well, help sounds like it is extremely far away on the basis of what we've just heard in this White House briefing. Caroline Levitt, on day 5 of military action, she went through the 4 objectives, as she sees it, laid them out for the United States in this. Destroy Iran's navy, destroy its ballistic missile capacity, ensure proxies in the region can no longer harm Americans, and ensure that Iran can never obtain a nuclear weapon. Regime change and the mechanism by which that might come about, that simply didn't appear to exist. She was asked about that. Her answer was that we hope freedom rests in their hands, referring to the Iranian people, but she didn't give any hint of how that freedom might be achieved. There have been reports, of course, that Donald Trump or the administration has been considering arming Kurdish forces in the hope of inspiring a popular uprising. She ruled that out, said that's false, shouldn't be written, she said. Ground troops, she was asked about that. She says that's not part of the current plan without ruling it out completely. So very much an American press secretary stressing the American interests in all of this. She was asked, what would victory be? And she said the conclusion or the achievement of these 4 objectives. She didn't lay out any timeline, but spoke about a focus being on a quick success, a quick and effective success. That was a phrase that she used. But on that business of Spain, let's have a listen, Sarah-Jane, to what she had to say there.
The president expects all of our European allies, of course, to cooperate in this long sought-after mission, not just for the United States, but also for Europe, to crush the rogue Iranian regime that, again, not only threatens America, but also threatens our European allies as well.
You'll remember, Sarah-Jane, on Monday, Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, in terms of the motivation for America becoming involved, he said on Monday that they got a sense that Israel was going to launch a strike, so they felt the US had to trigger a preemptive strike to get its retaliation in first, effectively, against Iran. That was a question put to Caroline Levitt. She dismissed that, said that it came down to Donald Trump, actually, and to a good feeling that he had that Iran was going to strike US assets and personnel in the region. So essentially the press secretary trying to lay down a definitive record of why the US got involved and where it's taking this military action, you know, trying to settle the horses after several days of different opinions, different views, different assessments from different officials.
James, we are outside the White House. We've got cameras inside because, as I said, we are expecting to hear from President Trump this hour. Some people coming into the room already, so we're going to keep an eye on that for when President Trump enters the room. What do you think we can expect from that, James?
Well, he's speaking to tech bosses, Sarah-Jane, about a policy that he laid out in his State of the Union address, actually. There will be 7 major tech companies involved: Google, Microsoft, OpenAI, Oracle. They're all in there. It's something called the Ratepayer Protection Pledge, and that essentially is to do with the tech companies footing the energy bills for AI data centers. So that is the main thrust of what that gathering is about. But, you know, there should come a point where during that roundtable he may be asked pertinent questions, pertinent as they relate to the Iran conflict. We'll see. But obviously the cameras are in the room, Sarah-Jane, and we will cut to it when the man himself arrives.
OK, James, thank you very much indeed. James Matthews there in Washington. Let's head to Israel. Sky correspondent Cordelia Lynch is in Ramla for us tonight. And Cordelia, explain to us the significance of Ramla.
Well, we are effectively in the nerve centre of the emergency services, just about 10 miles southeast of Tel Aviv. And you can see here a number of monitors. This is where they are tracking incoming missiles and rockets. This is where they are able to dispatch first responders in the event that there is a strike, there is an impact. And it's been a very busy few days for these people here. A number of strikes around Tel Aviv and elsewhere in the country. It has been a very busy day within the region that has now, this conflict enveloped nearly every country within the Middle East. We've seen key embassies targeted. We have seen oil distribution heavily impacted. We've seen a wave of attacks from Israel on Iran, intelligence targets, military facilities, but also reports of civilian buildings as well. And then you have Lebanon. Again, in the south there, we've seen the movement of Israeli troops. We have in the last few minutes also heard from the head of Hezbollah, who says that there is no chance that they will surrender no matter the sacrifices. They say that Israel represents an existential threat. So you see they're really framing this as perhaps a very enduring conflict, despite the risks, despite the mounting death toll, both there and, of course, inside Iran, where the highest number of casualties have been over 500. But the death toll from this conflict is already over 1,000, and that is causing a grave concern, of course. It is about the spread of this conflict that, you know, is larger now within the region than it has ever been. It is historic. It is a great challenge. There's anxiety within the Gulf states too. Now, in terms of the leadership for Iran, today we're expecting a day of mourning and the funeral to be held of the supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. But that, in fact, has been postponed. Lots of speculation about who his successor might be at the moment. The front runner is, in fact, his 56-year-old second son. Now, he would be an interesting pick because he effectively is a hardliner choice, certainly not one that America would want. And he is also a hereditary option, which goes against what the Iranian system would normally rely upon. But at the moment, he is the front runner. We will expect, I think, in the next few days to have that successor confirmed. But look, I think where we are now on day 5 of this conflict is an enduring moment where we are seeing the spread, we are seeing the rising fears. There's diplomatic pressure going on behind the scenes. The Gulf states trying to talk to America about the options to try and bring this to an end. But, you know, you stand in a place like this, and from where we've been in Tel Aviv as well, and you just get the sense this is a very kinetic situation where we see no end in sight, a spiralling war, and one that's getting more and more complex by the day.
Cordelia, thank you. Cordelia Lynch there in Ramla, Israel, for us tonight. As I said, we are waiting for President Trump to enter that room there at the White House. He's due to speak any moment now. As soon as he enters the room, we will bring it to you live here on Sky News. Cameras on the door for his imminent arrival. So the United States and Israel vowing to continue their attacks, and Iran continuing to launch rockets and missiles, tying up the American and Israeli air defences. So where are we in this conflict? Let's get a briefing now from our military analyst, Professor Michael Clark.
Day 5 of the Iran war looks pretty much like day 4, only more so. We said yesterday that the area covered by the war was regional, the whole of the Middle East up to South Asia. Well, today, that area seemed to get even bigger when the United States sank an Iranian frigate off the coast of Sri Lanka. We don't know how far off the coast of Sri Lanka, but the Sri Lankans sent out a rescue party, so it must have been within their rescue area, not so far away from the coast. And the Americans sank it with an attack submarine firing a torpedo. And the torpedo it fired must have been one of their Mark 48 heavy torpedoes. And the Mark 48 works by going off underneath the hull of the ship that's been targeted. Just look at the stern of the ship. As the torpedo hits it, the whole of the stern evaporates upwards. That breaks the back of any ship, and there's no way back from there for any vessel hit by a Mark 48 torpedo. Equally, the other boundary of this war is the NATO boundary in Turkey. And today, a ballistic missile was sent towards Turkey, somewhere on the Iraq-Syria border with Turkey, and it was shot down by NATO air defence systems. Now, we don't know if that missile was deliberately targeted, was a mistake, or just a misfire. We're not sure. But the fact that NATO's air defence system had to take it down is a very good example of the fact that NATO has got to be on full alert that it doesn't get caught in the fallout from this war, which is broadening all the time. And while that is happening, of course, the exchange of missiles continues. The United States continues to target Iran. More than 2,000 targets have now been hit with missiles in that sort of pattern that has been repeated, and we'll see more of that in days to come. And while that has been happening, the Israelis are continuing their campaign in Lebanon. They've moved ground troops into Lebanon now. They've attacked in northern Lebanon with air power, and they've started to attack targets in Iraq. The Iranians, for their part, have also launched a series of attacks, and their attacks too, interestingly, have also covered attacks on Western bases in Iraq, as well as attacks, of course, on the Israelis, and attacks all the way around the Gulf region. And so here we are on day 5 of the war. It looks like day 4, but with this difference, that the war now is getting broader and deeper by the day.
Well, let's take you to the White House. Donald Trump entering the room where he is due to speak to tech bosses, but no doubt he will end up talking about the situation in the Middle East, as is often the case. Let's listen in to the opening remarks.
Exciting times. I think you probably want to speak about war rather than this, but this is very important. This is very important, and we're doing very well on the war front, to put it mildly, I would say. Somebody said, on a scale of 10, where would you rate it? I said about a 15. And we're going to continue to do well. We have the greatest military in the world by far. And that was a tremendous threat to us for many years. 47 years they've been killing our people and killing people from all over the world. And I think we have great support. And I think if we didn't do it first, they would have done it to Israel and give us a shot if that was possible. And if we didn't terminate the worst deal, one of the worst deals ever made, the Obama nuclear deal, I call it the Obama nuclear deal, where he gave everything to Iran, including a nuclear weapon. It was a road to a nuclear weapon. Bad things would have happened 4 years ago, because they would have had a weapon 4 years ago if I didn't terminate that deal. So we're in a very strong position now, and their leadership is just rapidly going. Everybody that seems to want to be a leader, they end up dead. And it's an amazing thing that's taking place before your eyes, because for 47 years we were pushed around, and we shouldn't have been. And I think I can say, and you see it as well as I do, you see the tremendous progress that's being made. Their missiles are being wiped out rapidly. Their launchers are being wiped out. They're attacking their neighbors. They're attacking their, in some cases, allies, or not so long ago allies. And, you know, it's really a nation that was out of control, and they would have used it on us if we let them, if we waited any longer. A big factor was Soleimani, the killing of Soleimani in my first term. And maybe the biggest factor was the rebuilding of the military in my first term. And then the B-2s hit the, and I use the word obliterate because it really was, it was a complete obliteration of their nuclear potential. And that set them back very, very seriously. If we didn't hit within 2 weeks, they would have had a nuclear weapon. If we didn't do the B-2 attack a number of months ago, they would have a nuclear weapon. And When crazy people have nuclear weapons, bad things happen. So we're in very good shape now. I want to let you know that, and we will continue forward. But it's a great display of military strength, and I'm very proud to have, with some of the people in the room, both senators and congressmen, we rebuilt, and women, we rebuilt our military during the first term, and we're using it a little bit more than I thought we would have to. Venezuela worked out really great. We have a wonderful relationship with the president and the various representatives, and we're taking out hundreds of millions of barrels of oil, and that goes to our benefit and to Venezuela's benefit. They'll be doing better than they've ever done before, and we will get a big piece of that, and we'll also make life wonderful for the people of Venezuela who have been very, very badly hit. So that's a lot said in a short period of time, but you can witness it for yourself. And now we'll get on to something that I'm very proud of, because it was sort of my idea, like
very much so.
Build your own power plant. And everybody thought I was kidding. They said, really, you can do that? How would you do that? I said, we'll get you fast permits, and you'll build your own plants, but we're going to discuss it in great detail with the biggest people in the industry and some of our great leaders and senators. And congratulations on the Medal of Honor for your 100-year soldier. You know, 100 years old, 101 to be exact. And Daryl's been fighting that he get the Congressional Medal of Honor for many years, Daryl, right?
Mr. President, I give you all the credit for overcoming the lawyers in the Department of the Navy in a way that I thought was amazing.
Yeah.
And
well,
nobody could have done it but you.
Maybe it'll be a long. We had to get it to him a little bit quickly, but he looks like he's in good shape. He's got some years left, right?
He's planning to come back here for your next Medal of Honor ceremony. And, he's also going to be the star at Tailhook this summer if you want to come to Reno.
Well, I congratulate you for that success. That was amazing. He didn't stop. I've known him a long time. He never stops. So congratulations. It's very nice. We're here this afternoon for a historic signing that will help keep down utility bills very, very substantially, and electricity prices for millions of Americans, and in many cases for a lot of people that don't really understand why they're going up, but they're not going to be going up. They're going to be actually going down. Today we follow through on an announcement I made in my State of the Union address last week, as America's largest tech companies officially signed the Ratepayer Protection Pledge. It's a big deal. It's going to have a tremendous impact on electricity costs. We're bringing down all of the costs. We have this little interlude to do what we have to do, because we had it going, but these interludes are very important, especially this one. But the economy has never been like this. We broke 50,000 on the Dow. People thought we wouldn't do that within the first 4 years. We did it in the first year. And we brought 7 on the S&P, 7,000 on the S&P. They said that's even less likely to happen. And we did that too, all within the first year. Under this new agreement, big tech companies are committing to fully cover the cost of increased electricity production required for AI data centers, and that would be prices for American communities will not go up, but in many cases will actually come down, and very substantially. Because, you know, the data centers, and you people are so big, you're the biggest in the world, but they've developed a little bit of a bad public. They need some PR help, because people think that if a data center goes in, their electricity prices are going to go up, and that's not happening. It's not going to happen. And for the areas where it did happen, it won't happen anymore, because they never had this alternative. It's actually going to mean the prices come down. You're going to see how badly they want. Some centers were
President Trump moving on to domestic matters. He did open by speaking about the war in the Middle East. He said, we are doing very well on the war front. We are in a strong position, rating America's efforts as 15 out of 10. He went on to say that America has obliterated Iran's nuclear capability, saying that America believed Iran was 2 weeks away from having a nuclear weapon. He also said that America had wiped out Iran's missiles and launchers. Well, we'll keep across events at the White House. President Trump, as he always does at these events, takes questions at the end. So we'll see if any of those relate to events unfolding in the Middle East, and we'll return to Washington then. In the meantime, Sir Keir Starmer has defended his response to the war today and insisted that the special relationship with America is alive and well. The Prime Minister, you will remember, yesterday was criticised by President Trump for his refusal to allow the UK for the UK's bases to be used in the initial strikes on Iran. Mr. Trump saying this is not Winston Churchill we're dealing with. But speaking during Prime Minister's questions at lunchtime today, the PM said there is more to the UK's relationship with the US than hanging on to President Trump's latest words.
American planes are operating out of British bases. That is the special relationship in action. British jets are shooting down drones and missiles to protect American lives in the Middle East on our joint bases. That is the special relationship in action. Sharing intelligence every day to keep our people safe. That is the special relationship in action. Hanging on to President Trump's latest words is not the special relationship.
The fact of the matter is that the war in Iran is happening now. But the OBR say the government won't hit 3% on defence for 5 years. The war is happening now. There is no urgency from the Prime Minister. Why is he leaving the job of funding our armed forces to the next government?
Let's bring in Sky's chief political correspondent, John Craig, who is standing by in Westminster. And what did you make of the Prime Minister's reaction today to President Trump's criticism?
Well, you heard there, it was the Prime Minister was answering Conservative backbencher Gareth Bacon. You saw a very quick glimpse of him there while the PM was speaking. We all thought that Kemi Badenoch would raise the President's no Churchill jibe from last night in the Oval Office. She didn't, as we've heard. She's talking about defence spending. She then went on a route that took her to welfare spending, and she even mentioned the Gorton and Denton by-election. No mention of the President and Churchill. So you heard it was later on that the Conservative MP, Gareth Bacon asked the question. He talked about, he said the USA is our most important international strategic ally. Does the Prime Minister believe that his dithering and equivocal response to events in the Middle East has made that relationship stronger or weaker? And you heard the Prime Minister there talk about the strength of the relationship being in the cooperation on intelligence and military matters and so on. And it was quite telling that he concluded by saying, hanging on to President Trump's latest words is not the special relationship in action. In other words, the Prime Minister, I think, was alluding there to the fact that the President has changed his mind on the Chagos Islands a few times over the past month or so. But Kemi Badenoch, in her questions to the Prime Minister, echoed some of Donald Trump's words. You'll recall that this time last night we were talking about the President. Among his criticisms of Sir Keir Starmer was energy policy. Now, and talking about not developing the North Sea and letting the UK buy energy from Norway, which comes from the North Sea. Well, that was raised, in fact, by Kemi Badenoch as well. She talked about the fact that oil and gas. She said that we're buying energy from Norway and so on. But she also, when she was talking about defence spending, said that talked about how the amount of money being spent on defence had been cut by the current government. That was disputed by Sir Keir Starmer. But Kemi Badenoch said they're cutting defence spending by £2.6 billion from the MOD budget this year. And that's why there are no Royal Navy warships in the Middle East. Now, there's been a lot of criticism over the last few days of the length of time it is taking the Navy to get a warship, HMS Dragon, to the to the Middle East, and the fact that we've got no warships there. And that so many big warships, crucial warships, are being maintained or whatever, or are elsewhere. Now, today, the Armed Forces Minister Al Khan's, some of that criticism about how slow it is getting a warship to the Middle East and why so many of them are undergoing maintenance, why it's all so slow compared with the French. You've got a warship there much quicker. This was Al Khan's talking to Ali Fortescue on Sky News about the criticism of the fact that the Navy's being so slow to get HMS Dragon to the Middle East.
That vessel was being fitted out for a different task. We've now completely re-rolled it. We're going through varieties, different bits of maintenance to make sure that as fast as possible we can get that system up and running. We've had to change weapon systems on it, finish welding, get it up and running, and get it sailing as fast as possible. What I would say is that that asset is specifically designed to protect the carrier strike group and work within the carrier strike group, which was planning to go elsewhere. And so to deploy that point defence asset to Cyprus is not the only way in which we can defend our regional allies in the Mediterranean. And we've seen just recently some of the amazing work from our F-35 pilots, our Typhoon pilots, our counter-UAS teams that are downing drones all over the place, ranging from Qatar all the way, into sort of the broader sort of west of the Middle East. And so it's really, really impressive what we're doing so far in a defensive sort of linebacker role. And my hat's off to the armed forces that taking it to the enemy.
Well, I think many critics of the Ministry of Defence and the Navy will say that Mr Khan's explanation as to why it's taking so long, the fact it hasn't left yet, it's not going to be there till next week, HMS Dragon, a lot of feeble excuses. Time after time, we see reports by the Public Accounts Committee, the Defence Select Committee in Parliament, criticising delays and the fact that kit is not ready, warships are not ready, planes are not ready. So the Royal Navy really does stand accused of being too slow, although we have had an explanation from the Armed Forces Minister this evening.
John, thank you. John Craig following events for us from Westminster tonight. Still to come on the UK tonight, we're going to be talking about what the war in Iran means for you and your finances.
I'm Adam Parsons, Sky's Middle East correspondent. We've just entered Gaza. The vista out there is complete destruction. I'll always remember going into Gaza City during the war. All around us was destruction and the sounds of battle. What you see a lot of here are military machines, soldiers, devastation and destruction. What you see very little of are the locals, the Gazans, the people who used to live here, the ghosts of this town. I witnessed the scars of the October the 7th attacks, burnt out homes, bullet holes in walls, and bloodstains on the floor.
People were murdered. You have the black flag, you have the yellow flag. People were kidnapped.
Inside this convoy, prisoners released by Israel in exchange for their hostages.
The Israelis insist that many of these prisoners are terrorists, but here the Palestinians consider them a blend of freedom fighters and political prisoners.
There were tears and there was defiance. This land has been farmed for hundreds of years, but now it's a scene of conflict. Israeli settlers have come to this area to seize land.
They've taken the land that I inherited from my father, and my father inherited from his father.
What would happen if you went over?
Oh, we'll be shot.
This is a place where the past is cherished, but the future is feared. These are the settlers in waiting, keen to start a new life, to annex Gaza for Israel.
The least we can do is just kick them out of our land.
Gaza, which is just 2 miles in that direction, is under attack again. Sky News, get the full story first.
Well, hello and thank you for watching tonight on The Wrap. We will be joined by the very best commentators to explain the how and the why. He did know what he was doing. Both agree on that, can we?
No.
No. You can expect more analysis.
This is going to get deeper. I think it's going to end up with Russia.
Is war inevitable? What he's interested in is a deal.
That doesn't rule out strikes.
I disagree.
And laughs along the way.
Plus, a look at tomorrow's headlines. The Wrap. Everything wrapped up for you from 10.
Well, let's talk now about what the war in Iran means for you and your household finances. Experts say that we're currently looking at a 10% rise in the energy price cap this summer. And worse still, data shared exclusively with Sky News shows energy companies have pulled more than half the fixed tariffs that were available before the conflict erupted at the weekend. Just 17 fixed tariffs were available today, a reduction of 21 since Saturday. And the cheapest deal is £131 a year more than the cheapest deal last week. Well, things have been moving quickly. Let's get the perspective of consumer expert Harry Kind. Harry, really good of you to come on to talk to us this evening, because we've spoken a lot since Saturday morning about the effect of this war on gas and oil prices, and that translates most notably to the UK consumer as petrol and energy. How quickly do we see the impact?
Well, in many ways, it will be quite slow because we've got our price cap level kind of locked in from April through to July, and then there'll be the new price cap, which hasn't been announced. So that's where most people would see the potential rise. But what we see immediately are these reductions of fixed deals that are, you know, an actual bargain out there on the market. So I was one of these people who was frantically last night trying to get hold of one of these fixed deals before they got withdrawn. And hopefully I've managed to get one. And what remains out there is still really worth looking at if you want that kind of guarantee of consistency over 12 months. But it's not going to be the saving that, you know, a lot of people were getting just a couple of weeks ago. And so that will be problematic for a lot of people, even though we have this reduction coming in April of that £150 off the bills that we've been promised by the government.
Yeah, it seems like, you know, giving with one hand, then taking away with the other. Explain to people watching this evening why the price cap is going up in July in relation to what we've seen unfolding in the last few days.
Well, the price cap is set by Ofgem, who basically take a look at the wholesale gas prices, the oil prices, and decide how much our gas and electricity is going to be costing suppliers. And they set a kind of maximum level per unit that you'll be paying. As I always remind people, if you use more, you pay more. This is the cap on the unit price. And so that gets announced in a 3-month period. And for that July, it is expected, according to Cornwall Insights, to be a 10% increase in people's energy bills, which is not what people were looking forward to at all. So that is quite shocking. What I would say to people is, you know, 2/3 of people are just reliant on that variable rate. And if you check your bill, you'll probably say variable tariff or flexible tariff. That means that you are just at the whim of the price cap. And then if you want to get some kind of regularity, that's where the fix would come in. And I would really encourage people to take a look at fixes, because at the moment we have this very weird situation that even if you do fix now, you will still, in most cases, benefit from.
Oh, Harry, we've just lost your audio. How are we going to know what we'll benefit from? Let's see if we can fix that. Can we hear Harry? We've lost him completely. Let's try and fix that and return to Harry when we can. He's back. Harry, what a cliffhanger. What will we benefit
I'm so sorry.
from?
I didn't even realise I'd gone.
What will we benefit from?
So in April, you will still benefit from that £150 discount if you fix in most cases, which is unheard of. It's a really good deal for people.
Yeah. OK, some good news. Let's move on to petrol prices. What are we likely to see over the pumps in the coming days and weeks? And I suppose it all depends, doesn't it? Because there's always a lag with anything. What's happening, you know, in these wars, there's a lag before it actually reaches us and affects the money in our purses. But what are we likely to see at the pumps?
I mean, there should be a lag, really. You know, the petrol that is in the pumps was bought weeks ago. Except we see the petrol pumps go up in price immediately. We have seen some say 2.5 pence increase. Others have said way more. So we are likely to see prices go up. And really, if the level of transit going through the Strait of Hormuz remains as it is, we're supposed to see Brent crude oil go up to $100. That then gets passed on to us. I would hope that we won't see these kind of dramatic price increases until we see the kind of raw input go up quite so much. And the way that, we can make sure that happens is by shopping around as consumers. The price gap between the cheapest and most expensive petrol stations in an area is huge, potentially bigger than any price increases. And so I'd encourage people to shop around online. There's some really good comparison websites, and the government has actually changed the rules that say a petrol station has to reveal that data. They have to reveal the price and allow it to be published on these websites so that we can choose, I'm going to take a 2-mile round trip to get some cheaper fuel this time.
Yeah, so shop around for your energy and shop around for your petrol as well. And like you said, you don't have to drive around to do it. You can do it online. In terms of where consumers are likely to, again, we don't know how long the situation in the Middle East is going to last. President Trump has said 4 to 5 weeks, but then in the next breath, he said it could be months. Who knows? But if it does go on longer than 4 to 5 weeks, where else can consumers expect to feel it in their pockets?
With a kind of globalized, complicated supply chain where some products will be relying on going through the Strait of Hormuz, they will be relying on energy prices to grow the tomatoes, to ship the goods. We will see inflation rise just generally across the board. Now, hopefully that is not the case, but when we saw the war in Ukraine, that raised prices because of these knock-on effects. When we saw even the blocking of the Suez Canal, we saw a rise in prices pretty quickly. And so these global things will affect food and drink. They will affect the prices of our energy. And what we've really seen instantly has been the prices of airline tickets really going up. And with some people saying that this is actually price gouging as airlines try and take advantage of people desperate to get out of a difficult situation.
Yeah, OK. Harry, look, really good to talk to you. I'm sure we'll talk again in the coming weeks. That's Harry Kine, their consumer expert, with what it means for you, everything that's happening in Iran, you and your finances. Now, let's talk more about shipping. Donald Trump's offer of US naval escorts for shipping travelling through the Straits of Hormuz has failed to get ships moving. While the security risk remains real, the failure to get vessels through the Strait is mostly because of insurance. Our business and economics correspondent Paul Kelso has been to Lloyd's of London, the world's oldest insurance market, where experts say naval escorts could even increase the risk to shipping.
This is Lloyd's of London, the heart of global maritime insurance, as it has been since 1689, when the first brokerage was established in a coffee shop close to this site. This is the original rostrum, where a caller would shout information to brokers, and that is the Lutein Bell. It comes from a ship called the Lutein that sank, carrying a cargo of gold bullion. Lloyd's paid out for the loss and established its reputation. What's worrying brokers here today isn't gold, it's oil and gas, specifically the oil and gas on tankers in the Persian Gulf, currently sat waiting to know what to do either side of the Straits of Hormuz. They've been sitting there since the Iranian military made threats, but there's another factor, not just their security, their insurance status. The Lloyd's market has something called a joint war committee, which assesses what it calls war-related perils for shipping, and they have expanded the area of what they consider to be high risk in the last few days to include Kuwait, Qatar, a wider area of the Gulf. And that simply means the insurance those ships set out with may no longer apply. So they insist they are insured, but they're having to reassess the risk. Reinsurance will come in due course, and then owners can decide whether to move their ships. For now, they are static, and traffic through the Straits of Hormuz has collapsed. What's going up is the cost, not just of shipping, but almost certainly the cost of insuring these vessels. Premiums will rise. There is an offer from Donald Trump made via social media that an American financial institution will offer insurance, but here they don't know what that means.
The detail of such a scheme hasn't been given to anyone so far as we know, and it will take time to work it out. And the appetite is unknown. Essentially, our market is still writing risks, and there isn't a perception here that there's a need for intervention at this time.
Trump has also promised naval vessels to provide an escort for tankers, even if that could mean oil bound for China being taken there by US military vessels. Some think that might reduce the risk. Others point out it could push up the premium because a naval vessel with a US flag could be a target.
There will be those who think it might increase the target because the Iranians are targeting US military. It's not known how capable they would be against the new drone and missile threats that we're seeing. This is not the same as the 80s. So yes, I mean, obviously people would like to see the detail, they'd like to see it happen. If you're a tanker owner, you'd be, on the one hand, delighted that it's been offered, on the other hand, trying to understand whether it does increase the risk or not.
This place once paid out £1 million to the owners of the Titanic within 30 days. Now, mercifully, no vessels have been lost since this war began. We can be pretty certain that prices of oil, of gas, of premiums paid by those shipping them, and ultimately to consumers, they're going up.
The first repatriation flight carrying stranded British nationals is due to leave Oman tonight, with the Prime Minister promising more government flights from the Middle East in the coming days. More than 130,000 Brits have registered their interest in being helped to leave the region since war broke out on Saturday. Commercial airlines have begun operating a reduced number of flights. Let's get the latest now. We speak to our correspondent Amelia Harper, who is at Heathrow Airport. So limited operations when it comes to commercial flights. What do we know so far?
Well, it's been an absolute headache for British nationals who have been stranded in the Middle East trying to get back home. But we know today that the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, said that the first repatriation flight from Oman, from Muscat International Airport, was scheduled to take off. And it was scheduled to take off at 11 p.m. local time. That's around 7 o'clock our time, arriving, we think, at about 2 o'clock in the morning. As of SJ 2046, we are not quite sure if that flight has actually taken off. Priority, we are told, was given to vulnerable passengers for that flight, and the Prime Minister saying that more repatriation flights were being put on in the coming days. If that's the charter flight side of things, you've also got the commercial flight side of things. Now, more than 1,000 British nationals have arrived back in the UK after getting a commercial flight in from the Middle East since the war broke out 5 days ago. Thousands of flights, as we've been saying for the last 5 days, have been cancelled as airspace above the Middle East has been closed. The first commercial flight that BA is operating is set to take off in the early hours of tomorrow morning, also from Muscat International Airport. We are being told that another flight from BA is being put on the Friday and the Saturday. In a short statement, they said, we'll continue to review the situation, and if we're able to, we'll add additional services. And the Prime Minister said that he expected 8 flights, commercial flights, were going to be taking off from the UAE, arriving at airports across the UK today. We at Sky News have had a look at the airline websites and the airport websites, and we think that 10 flights have or are due to land in the UK at some point by the end of tonight, one of those flights being from Jordan. In terms of what the travel advice is, the Foreign Office is saying this, SJ, all but essential travel to Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar and the UAE, and they're warning against all travel to and from Israel and Palestine. I think, SJ, this is a situation that could take weeks potentially to clear, with passengers stuck in the Middle East for an indefinite amount of time.
Amelia, thank you. Amelia Harper with the latest on that situation from Heathrow. And as we've been reporting, Iran has lashed out at America's allies across the Middle East, firing rockets and missiles indiscriminately across the region. The attacks are mostly being repelled, but the numbers suggest there could soon be a problem. Our Science and Technology editor Tom Clark explains.
All wars are expensive, but are the costs of America's attack on Iran financially and logistically unsustainable? Take a look at this. This is Iranian state-affiliated media showcasing vast stockpiles of low-cost but highly lethal Shahed drones. In response to America and Israel's attack on Iran, the regime launched hundreds of these against its attackers and their allies. But there's a huge mathematical mismatch between the cost of Iran's weapons and those used to defend against them. Take the UAE, for example. It's had amazing success in thwarting Iranian missile and drone attacks, claiming to have downed more than 90% of those fired at it in the first 3 days of the conflict. But a Shahed drone costs between $20,000 and $50,000. The missiles used to intercept them between $500,000 and $1.5 million. One analyst estimating it could have cost the UAE up to $750 million to thwart an attack of around 500 Shahed drones. That's 20 to 30 times more than it cost Iran to launch them.
The math clearly favors Iran in this strategy of attrition because they just have, we don't know exactly how many, Shahed drones they might have in their stockpiles, but it's much larger than the combined total of the stockpiles of interceptor missiles that are available. We're now seeing sort of a race between Israel and the United States trying to locate this drone infrastructure to try to destroy it, to reduce the pressure on these interceptors versus Iran trying to keep it an active threat.
The UAE says it's got plenty of missile stockpiles to continue to defend itself, but it's been reported that America's allies in the Middle East are desperately trying to replenish their supplies of mainly US-made missile interceptors. The question is, will they be able to do that, given it looks like America may well be running out of ammo too? Take Tomahawk missiles, very effective and very expensive, being launched here from warships off Iran. It's estimated the US military's deployed up to 400 Tomahawk missiles to the Middle East. That represents 10% of the 4,000-strong US arsenal. Stockpiles of THAAD missiles are thought to be seriously depleted too. America reported launching around 150 of them in its 12-day war with Iran in June last year. That represents about a quarter of its 600-plus stockpiles of that weapon.
We are using these interceptors at a rate that's much faster than you can possibly replace them. The problem is that increases your long-term strategic risk, particularly in other theaters.
America, of course, can always withdraw from the Middle East once it's run out of weapons, but analysts warn its peer adversaries are watching. If America depletes its arsenal through campaigns like this, what power would it have to deter Russia or China if they decided to lash out too? Tom Clark, Sky News.
So to come on the UK tonight, we'll be in Manchester as protests are expected to take place outside a vigil for Iran's supreme leader.
A lifeline for millions of people living on both sides of one of the most volatile international borders.
It's dams like these that have become inflection points between the two nuclear-armed neighbors, which could potentially lead to water wars in the future. A terror attack has shattered the peace and tranquility of Kashmir. At least 26 people have been killed and as many injured when militants fired upon them. I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
The old and young, all weary after being trapped for days as the worst floods have hit Kerala in a century.
3 days we are on a rooftop. They have no food, nothing.
The roads have been inundated. The only way out is to get people by boat. There have been reported deaths and many injuries, several critical.
Many families will grapple with the unimaginable loss of one of the worst disasters in India's aviation history.
The spiraling violence between two nuclear-armed neighbors that harbor decades of hostility just seems to be getting worse by the day.
Garbage dumps like this not only threaten the lives of millions of people, but also pose a deadly consequence on the environment and climate.
It is a source of death, decay, disease and pollution for hundreds of thousands of people living in its shadows.
There is so much disease because of this garbage. Sometimes it's so difficult to just breathe.
Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Over the next 45 days, an estimate 400 million Hindu pilgrims are expected to converge here in Prayagraj on the banks of the holy river Ganga and Yamuna. It's a real kaleidoscope of people from all walks of life.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... My darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
Is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need?
Protests are taking place in Manchester tonight over a vigil commemorating Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei. Sky correspondent Shingi Mararike is in Manchester for us tonight. Shingi.
Good evening, SJ. So, yeah, that's right. What you're seeing is a split in the centre of Manchester with this crowd here celebrating the death of Ayatollah Khamenei. They are the scenes we've seen across the country, jubilant Iranians. But, like you were saying, there's been a contentious crowd that's also gathered in Manchester, which is a group of people who are holding a candlelit vigil in his honour. And I'm just trying to take you a bit closer into the crowd here so you can see that sea of Iranian flags, but also Israeli flags too, celebrating the fact that Israel and the US carried out that joint military operation that saw the regime, or the leader of the regime, the supreme leader, killed. And they're singing, they're dancing, they're chanting. This is a celebratory atmosphere. I have to tell you, on the other side, there's also a crowd that's gathered. That crowd is less than the one here. It is in its hundreds, and they are holding pictures of Ayatollah Khamenei. They are telling me that they are here in support of him as a leader of the Shia Muslims across the world, and talking about the fact that he was supportive of Palestine. But obviously there are so many concerns around the fact that that crowd have gathered, from the fact that that regime perpetrated human rights offences, they're a repressive regime, and also we know that they also arm proxies across the Middle East. But there's a strong sense of feeling here, one that's celebratory, one where you can see those people with their flags up behind me. But on the other side, there's a sense of sadness, you could put it that way. But the fact that that is happening has attracted criticism, with the police here out in their number, and they've separated us. So we're on one side, but the police have created what they're calling a sterile zone, meaning we couldn't get through the middle of the crowd. They prevented us from doing that. We had to take the long way around. And there have been moments in which we've seen people on the other side being sort of crowded out by members of that vigil, and sort of what you'd call slightly tense exchanges. And I think among this celebration on one side and this protest here, protesting against the vigil, is what you would call a complicated set of circumstances. A reminder of the fact that the Middle East is a situation that drives divides in British society. The fact that we're in central Manchester, and in central Manchester you've essentially got the middle of the city split into half. But on this side there are people celebrating the fall of the regime, and you can see them behind me.
Shingi, thank you very much. Shingi Mararike, following events in Manchester for us tonight, that vigil and the protests over it. More on that throughout the evening. And that's all from the UK tonight. Up next, it's The World with Yalda.